Home government has vowed to disregard any order from the African Court on Human and People's Rights, directing that it halts its efforts to retrieve the 51.2 million cedis wrongly paid businessman Alfred Woyome as judgment debt. This follows a Supreme Court ruling on Tuesday rejecting an order presented by lawyers for Mr. Woyome, asking the Apex Court to stay all proceedings relating to the matter. Retrieval of the money was one of the many anti-corruption assurances the Kufuor-led government gave in the run-up to the 2016 elections. Joining us, Joseph Akable has more in this report.
Two motions were before the court. The first was asking that the court stays all proceedings relating to repayment of the 51.2 million cedis. The second one, again, was a fresh one that was moved by lawyers for the businessman. They informed the court that they had secured a November 24 judgment directed at government, asking that government halt any attempt to sell any properties belonging to the businessman. So the lawyers had insisted that the court should arrest its ruling on a first motion that had been moved and hold on as the African Court on Human and People's Rights settles the matter currently before it. Deputy Attorney General Godfred Yeboah-Dame opposed the two applications with regards to the second one and the latest order coming from the African Court. He had insisted that even though government had signed onto it and had it ratified by Parliament of the country, he said that it was important that those laws had to be incorporated into the laws of the country. Now, he said that once that had not been done, it meant that the government or the country was not bound by those laws, even though they will obey the court if it calls on them to appear before it. Delivering the judgment of the five-member panel, a unanimous decision, Judge Senin Yeboah said the businessman had failed to show factually and legally any basis for the Apex Court to hold on. It again said that the Apex Court has jurisdiction on any matter in relation to the constitution of the country, and it will amount to allowing another body take over its functions if it were to hold on to proceedings. So it dismissed the two motions that were filed by businessman Alfred Agbesi Woyome. Engaging the press after proceedings, Deputy Attorney General Godfred Yeboah-Dame, who had told the court government had indeed signed onto the treaty, said they will go ahead to attach all properties belonging to businessman Alfred Agbesi Woyome.
First and foremost, the ruling of the African Court came as a surprise to us. There was no hearing whatsoever. There was no notification to us of the proceeding. All that had been done was a motion filed by them. We had also filed our affidavit in opposition. And then there were no further representations whatsoever. So it actually came out of the blue. And if you look at the ruling of the African Court itself, it's indicated that they were represented and we were not represented. So how come they were represented and we were not represented? We think that something went amiss, something fishy occurred. But of course, we've crossed the barrier. The Supreme Court has done what is needed to be done, and we are very satisfied with it.
The other question is whether we are obeying the order directed at us, saying that we should not attach the properties, that is government and the state as a whole.
No, I think 2 points are very relevant here. The first relevant point is that, as the court itself noted, and as I indicated in my submissions also, that is the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, which is paramount. The government of Ghana does not, the government of Ghana is required to comply with laws set out in Article 11. And on top of that set of laws is the Constitution of Ghana. And so that is what we really go by. And in the same Constitution, it makes the Supreme Court solely and exclusively responsible for the dedication of constitutional matters. So that sole and exclusive jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in constitutional matters is not shared with any court, whether local or foreign. And indeed, that is what we go by. And it's again the same Constitution, Article 2, clauses 3 and 4, also directs that any decision or order of the Supreme Court must be duly obeyed and carried out. And it even sets out consequences which border on crime. So if a person unduly delays resort to subterfuge, plots, and ploys as this to evade judgment of the Supreme Court, that person's conduct is actually bordering on the commission of a crime. So let him go on and enjoy himself, but of course, definitely he will hit the wall.
So just to be clear, you continue to attach the properties?
Yes, again, yes, as I indicated, even the African Court of Human Rights itself, the protocols established of that court must have been specifically incorporated into the laws of Ghana. And the process of incorporation into the laws of Ghana, the domestic law of Ghana, will require the enactment of an act of parliament. It is not new. You have the Geneva Convention. There's a Geneva Convention Act. There are various other protocols which are abided by an act of parliament. government. But this is non-existent. So what you mean, as far as I'm concerned, is perhaps just biding himself in circles. This decision of the African Court of Human Rights, as per common law, as per the Constitution of Ghana, as per even previous decisions of the Supreme Court of Ghana itself, must be specifically incorporated into the domestic law of Ghana before they can be applicable. And that is what these are the principles that will operate by.
What remains to be seen is the next step that will be undertaken by the Attorney General's Department after serving notice that they will ensure that the debt is satisfied by the businessman. Reporting from the Supreme Court, my name is Joseph Akable.
The minority in Parliament is demanding firm timelines from government on when it intends to roll out the National Identification Program, having broken its promise to issue the cards by the end of the year. Previous assurances that the cards will be issued in September and subsequently in November have not materialized. Minority member on Parliament's Communications Committee, Samuel George, says the NPP should apologize to Ghanaians for its inability to fulfill its promise. The issue came up during debate on the 2017 budget statement on the floor of Parliament on Tuesday.
Right Honourable Speaker, I hold in my hands the NPP 2016 manifesto. This is page 83 of the NPP's manifesto, chapter 6, Roman numeral 7. It says Information, Communication and Technology, ICT. The NPP will put ICT and especially data science, including analytics, at the center of the national development agenda and also as part of a strategy to position the country as a regional ICT hub. NPP will achieve this by engaging in the following activities. 1. National Identification Scheme. We will register every resident in Ghana within the first year of taking office. Right, Honourable Speaker, it appears to me that the NPP is drawing a calendar of 24 months for a year, not 12 months for a year. Because as we speak, Right, Honourable Speaker, you are the number 3 gentleman of this country. When the president travels and the vice president travels, you are in charge of this country. Right, Honourable Speaker, I put it on record that even you as our number 3 man does not have the Ghana card. So we cannot even tell who else has the card. Apart from the president, who was given a card on the 15th of September this year. The vice president, who has been the poster boy and the chief protagonist of the National Identification Scheme, has no card. The Minister for Communication and her 2 deputies who are in this chamber do not have a card. So, Mr. Speaker, who has a Ghana card?
But Deputy Communications Minister Vincent Odote insists government is on course to deliver on the promise to roll out the ID cards.
His trajectory was that we have failed, that we promised to issue an ID card to Ghanaians by the close of the year, and we have failed. But that is not true. That is not true. That is not true. We are at a stage now where the contract has been awarded, logistics have been procured, the systems have been put in place, and he is aware of that. Because of the Supreme Court ruling that we cannot use NHIS card to register, we had to amend the law. But that does not mean that we have failed, because I'm talking to you, Joy News, to go straight to the NID office now, and you see tangible, verifiable evidence that this process has started. And I can tell you that this process is about 90%. We are just awaiting the final the approval by Parliament of the amendment, and then we can proceed.
But then apart from the president himself, no one else has an ID card in this country. Is that accurate?
What
just for clarity, because
the Minister of Defense has told you repeatedly that the Vice President has a card.
Now, an Afrobarometer survey conducted by NGO Center for Democratic Development, indicates Ghanaians aren't convinced the sanctions regime for corruption is severe enough and would want to see officials suffer a lot more for their corrupt deeds. The survey conducted between July and September this year again saw the police topping the list of the most corrupt, with traditional authorities and religious leaders trending up the rankings. And Odame has more on the findings, which centered on immigration, illegal small-scale mining and political vigilantism.
We want to leave the shores of Ghana because there are no jobs here. We are for the fight against galamsey, that's illegal mining, but provide alternate livelihoods for those affected. These are some of the results that came out of the 7th Afrobarometer conducted by the CDD here in Ghana. For more, let's listen to the Senior Research Fellow here at CDD, Daniel Ama Ato.
Almost about a third of Ghanaians said in the next 1 or 2 years they hope to leave the country. Majority of them said they want to leave to seek greener pastures in terms of getting work outside the country. Now our traditional authorities and the religious leaders, who are the bastions of morality, are even moving into that high echelon of people perceived to be corrupt. So where do we turn to as a nation?
For former Commissioner of Scratch, Justice Emil Schultz, successive governments have not dealt effectively with the issue of corruption. That's why it continues to persist.
What is the basis for saying that government has allocated sufficient resources to the fight against corruption? In what ways has government done so? Because I don't really see it. And part of that is a result of the appointment process which we have, which means that the people who head some of the institutions have been appointed not on the basis of meritocracy, but on the basis of political affiliation, patronage, and so on. That is one of the biggest problems.
Well, security analyst Emmanuel Soate believes that the recruitment of personnel into the police service must be done with strict scrutiny.
Recruitment. The extent to which we recruit people based on their passion for the job, the extent to which we recruit people who are qualified, the extent to which we support the police institutions to shed off some of the political albatross around them sometimes, I think to a large extent will help them.
The discussions have been held, recommendations have been made, and it all boils down to government. Ghanaians are tasking government to deal with immigration, corruption, political vigilantism, mob justice, and illegal mining. This is what the people of Ghana want from government. From the CDD headquarters here in Accra, my name is Hannah Odame for Joy News.
Hello again, good evening to you. Welcome to Business. Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has justified the decision by the Bank of Ghana to reduce the policy rate by some 100 basis points to 20%. According to the Vice President, the move is justified looking at the current development in the economy. For some time now, inflation, treasury bill rates, and government expenditure patterns have all dropped significantly. He was speaking at a keynote address at the just-ended National Banking Conference in Accra. Ebenezer Sabuti was there for Joy Business.
Some economists are of the view the Bank of Ghana should have maintained the monetary policy rate because a further cut may have a negative impact on fresh investments in the capital markets. Addressing the 21st National Banking Conference in Accra, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia noted it is a great move to help in government's low inflation targeting agenda.
One of the issues that has bedeviled the banking industry for many, many years has always been the issue of high interest rates. And the big question that we grappled with at the central bank for the longest time as we pursued our inflation targeting framework is how do we bring down interest rates? It's a big question and one that banks have struggled with, governments have struggled with. We've always realized that high interest rates basically make it difficult for banking customers to actually repay their loans. So you end up in that environment either lending to government or lending at the very short end because you cannot take the risk lending at the longer end.
The conference is part of the 2017 Bankers Week celebration organized by the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana under the theme Building a Robust and Sustainable Banking System in the Country. Reverend Patricia Sapo is the president of the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana.
We still have a lot to contribute in the area of building a robust and resilient banking sector to ensure the maximization of shareholders' value, protection of depositors' funds, and generating profits. It is important that we all act quickly as stakeholders to resolve the outstanding policy pieces, whilst at the same time reflecting on the coherence of the overall framework for ensuring financial soundness and stability in the industry. The second critical issue, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to mention today has to do with the roles played by the directors of banks and management in ensuring sound banking policies in the banking sector.
The celebration is expected to end with the annual bankers' dinner on Saturday.
Meanwhile, the Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, has also hinted the next phase of government's digitization program is going to focus on developing the mortgage market. According to him, this will be done through a proper land title registration system to be introduced next year.
The paperless port clearance system that has been introduced, again, helps all of us, and that. But one of the big things that we are going to be doing next year, we are shifting our focus to land and land registration. This is a real bane of the banking industry and the financial services industry. How do you develop a mortgage market if you cannot really ascertain title to land? How does that market develop? You will not develop the mortgage market. In fact, when you look at the data, and I was a bit amazed when I looked at the data, you see that in terms of mortgage to income ratio, right? Mortgage to income ratio, Ghana is the highest in the world, right? Mortgage payments relative to income. We top the world, right? One of the lowest is the United States of America. But, you know, we are at the top. And it doesn't make sense for the poorest countries to be in the top side of that bracket. Mortgage to income. But of course, it's telling you that a lot of the mortgages are being paid by people who are probably earning incomes from outside and maybe a very secluded few. But you can't develop a mortgage market with those types of ratios. It will not. But we have to turn our focus to the land registry and the process of land title. I think this is the next phase of digitalization that is about to happen, and we are tackling that next year.
Away from that, workers of the defunct UT Bank and Capital Bank could get their severance packages paid to them. The firm appointed to handle the transaction, PricewaterhouseCoopers, is currently in discussions with unions of the defunct banks on possible payment of their entitlements. There were reports staff who had even worked for more than 10 years would not be taking anything home because of current legal arrangements covering the takeovers. Country partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Vish Ashagbo, tells Joy Business the decision to pay the workers can only be finalized after those negotiations.
Obviously, we work with the records of the company. So we look at the records internally, we look at the financial statements, and of course we also invite claims, etc., from third parties. And if there's any indication that there's an asset somewhere belonging to either of these banks, it's our job to go and recover the assets. What I can say is that for now, we believe that we have a pretty good view of the population. There may be one or two out there that we still need to follow up on. But fundamentally, yes, we have a pretty good view of the asset base of these banks.
Help me out with some education, and the staff of these two banks are also, you can call them an asset or liability or whatever, but for a lot of them, they are worried about their fate if they are being asked to go home. Could they really get a severance, or they might not get the severance based on the law that guides this whole arrangement that you're having right now?
Well, that's something we're looking at right now. We're currently in discussion with the unions representing the staff of the affected banks. So I'd rather not go into detail on that currently. Safe to say that the dialogue has started. And we hope to conclude that very soon so that everybody is clear on the position.
Are they hopeful of getting something on? Because per the legal arrangement, I know that they won't come on the first top creditors and they might be down there. And it's likely that if all the assets are defrayed, they might end up not getting anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, George, the law is the law. We, in this process, we don't have...
What does the law say?
Much discretion. What does the law say in respect of...
Dealing with these particular issues in terms of liquidating the assets and paying all the creditors?
Well, the law has a very specific procedure as to... in broad terms, as I said before, the receiver's job is to realize assets, pay liabilities. Okay. You must use what efforts you can to get as much value as you can for the assets, so the receiver must. In terms of paying liabilities, the Act is quite clear, the order of ranking. We don't have any discretion around that, so we just have to follow that procedure.
Meanwhile, there are reports that about 100 workers of the two banks have been sent home by GCB Bank, and that there are many more that could also be heading home. We're still watching the business stories for the day, and moving on, the amount of money that the country earned from its exports witnessed some significant increase. Latest data from the Bank of Ghana showed it went up by $2 billion compared to what was gotten in September last year. George Wiafe has more on why businesses and government should be excited by this development, as well as its impact on the city.
The earnings increased from $8 billion in September 2016 to $10 billion in September 2017, according to the Bank of Ghana data. The jump was largely influenced by pickup in earnings from gold, which brought in $4.3 billion, whilst cocoa secured $2 billion for the country. Crude export earned $1.7 billion. For gold, the Bank of Ghana attributes the increase in earnings to pickup in production. The report also showed that the various commodity types witnessed an increase in earnings for the state. Further development would boost the Bank of Ghana's dollar reserves, a development that would improve the amount of money available to support the country's imports and assure businesses that the central bank is in a good position to support and stabilize the local currency, which has experienced some serious depreciation over the past 2 weeks. For government, these good exports couldn't have come at a better time, looking at the current challenges it is having with revenue mobilization. The Bank of Ghana's gross international reserves ending October this year stood at almost $7 billion. This can improve the Bank of Ghana's ability to support imports in times of crisis for almost 4 months.
And that will be it for Business Tonight. Thank you so much for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. There's more news ahead. Good evening.
Drivers and commuters at some transport terminals in Accra are angry over what they say is the authorities' failure to appreciate the hardship brought on them with the closure of the Wipe and Yape bridges. The drivers, some of whom are now doing more than twice the usual travel time to northern Ghana, say the impromptu closure is worrying. Joy News' Justice Bedu spent time at one of the stations here in Accra and sent in this report.
This is the OA station in Accra. It's days away from the Yuletide, and this is supposed to be one of the busiest times for them. But times have changed.
This is one of the busiest stations in Accra where people and goods are conveyed to northern Ghana. And yet, even here, business is now at its lowest. Many of the people about to make this journey are now in a state of despair and uncertainty.
It's been just a week after the closure of the Wipe and Yape bridges, and already the impact is so clear, with passengers and drivers feeling the pinch the most.
Before I came here, I moved through a lot. I went to Imperial, I went to SPC. SPC has been closed down. We have been treated like second-class citizens because the first-class citizens they go to airport, they take flight, and they don't face these difficulties. If If I don't even take time, I will sleep on the way. I will sleep on the way. I'll pass through Eastern Corridor, get to Tamale. I'll pick a car from Tamale, get to Yape, drop there, and take a Motor King across the bridge to another village before I would take a car to Fufulso Junction, before I would take a car from Fufulso to Damango where I am going. Something that is supposed to take me about 8 hours, I am supposed to take about 21 to 22 hours.
Middle Age Nana Poku has been plying the Accra-Navrongo route all his working life. He has just returned to Accra, having gone through what he says are some of the worst days of his life.
I left Paga last Thursday. I only got to Accra last Sunday night. We traveled all the way to Yape, hoping we could use the bridge. We weren't allowed. So we had to travel back through Tamale and Salaga to Makango. That is one of the worst routes in Ghana. Before we get to the Volta River at Yeji.
It takes 3 bad days, I say good days, bad days, and Sunday
Ordinarily, over 5 transport unions ply the route from Accra to northern Ghana. Apart from OA Transport, all of them have suspended their services, including the state-owned STC. And even here, lorry fares have now gone up by about 30%.
Before the closure, we are passing the main road, and we use about 2,200 cedis for fuel, and now it's about 3,000 for fuel. And the time at the first, we move here 12 o'clock, and then the 4. But because of the cruiser, we combined everything to move by 4 o'clock.
The closure of the bridge came with no warning, and not much was done to provide an alternate route. After nearly 50 years of existence, the Yape Bridge has yet to see any major refurbishment. It's been less than 9 months since the Bupe Bridge was shut for repair works, and there are doubts the planned maintenance would make much of a difference in extending its useful life. Justice Bedu, Joy News, Accra.
Meanwhile, the hundreds of stranded commuters and drivers it's creating some tension at the Yeji ferry site, and they are growing patient by the day with fierce violence could break out. The only ferry at Yeji, which takes just 9 vehicles at a time, has come under a lot of pressure following the closure of the Bupe and Yape bridges. Daniel Techi works with the Live FM at Yeji. He's been speaking with some of the stranded commuters.
We went for meeting in Accra, and we are going back to Tamale. The situation here is very, very unfortunate. So we want the government to come and help us to solve this problem. Else they will bring another pantu to come and help, or anything they can do to help us. So we are pleading to the government to help us in this situation.
I'm working with University of Education. I am on a trip to Bolgatanga to supervise students there. I've been here since Friday and I've not been able to cross to Makango. I'm very close to the ferry. My car is very close to the ferry, but I'm not certain of when actually I would get into the ferry. There's no guarantee. There's lots of frustrations. What I can say now is that I would plead that the government comes to the people's aid.
Parliament has meanwhile summoned the Roads and Highways Minister Makon Atta to appear before the House on Thursday to respond to questions on the closure of the Buipe and Yape bridges.
One can understand that the Ministry of Roads and Highways have had to direct the closure of these two bridges, which is a link between the north and the south, from the Brown Harbour through the northern region to the upper east region. It is a known major route to Kintampo, Techima, and Kumasi. And Mr. Speaker, the closure of the two bridges at Buipe and Yape is affecting the movement of goods and passengers, resulting in some untold hardship. Mr. Speaker, we would want to invite the Minister for Roads to further brief this House what contingency measures he put in place before the announcement of the closure, and what is it that he is doing to ameliorate the suffering of the many persons who want to travel from the north to the south, taking advantage of other routes. I know that those who are able to use the ferry through Makango are able to cross. But Mr. Speaker, we would want the Minister for Roads and Highways to apprise this House, representatives of the people, what plans and alternative measures he took in place before announcing the closure, and what steps he is taking together with the regional coordinating councils and the district assemblies to end it. It's affecting businesses, it's affecting transporters, and Mr. Speaker, we are in the Christmas season where persons need to move and move freely.
I think as a House, and from what the minority leader rightly said, it is incumbent on the House to see how best we can facilitate the easy movement of persons across the country. And this issue has been a thorny issue within the past 2-3 days. So I agree with him, Mr. Speaker, but information available to the leadership of our side shows that it's a serious issue at Cabinet, and then the Minister will be here to appropriately brief the House as to measures that they are putting in place to ease movement.
The Honourable Minister for Roads will appear in this Honourable House to appraise the House on matters relating to these roads and bridges as requested by the Honourable Minority Leader. Thank you.
Now returning to our earlier story on the African migrant story, which the crisis which is happening in Libya. We just have this news release coming in from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. It says, following disturbances, disturbing reports of Ghanaians being sold off as slaves in Libya, the Ghana mission in Malta, with concurrent accreditation in Libya, paid a consular visit to the 3 detention centers in Tripoli, namely Tajura, Trek Al-Sika, and Trek Mata. The purpose was to ascertain the veracity of the claims, assess their condition, and offer assistance to those detainees identified as Ghanaians, among many other illegal migrants held at these centers. It emerged that the 168 Ghanaian detainees who were identified were not part of the slave trade as alleged, but had rather been arrested on illegal immigration charges and were already being held in detention camps. In view of the discovery, these undocumented Ghanaians were immediately issued with the necessary travel documents to facilitate their repatriation to Ghana on a chartered flight with support from the International Organization for Migration, IOM. It may be put on record. It is hoped that the returnees will take advantage of the opportunities being provided by government to reintegrate properly and contribute to national development. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration remains seized with the matter and shall keep the general public informed of any developments. Meanwhile, steps are also being taken to open a consulate in Libya following the closure of a mission during the Libyan crisis. So the statement coming from the Foreign Affairs Ministry just indicates in summary that there are no Ghanaians, as far as they are concerned, there are no Ghanaians involved in the slave trade, or there are no Ghanaians being traded off as slaves in Libya.
This is Joy News Prime.
President of the Brahafo Regional House of Chiefs, Pemapem Ya Cabrese V, says the creation of the Bono East region is needed to bring major development to the other part of the region that has been neglected for years. Speaking to the media ahead of the meeting with the Committee of Inquiry for the creation of new regions, he noted Bono East is endowed with resources and social services and needed to be autonomous. He further debunked claims that the emergence of the Bono East region will bring disunity among its people.
I don't think they will going to create any disunity. We are talking about certain conditions, like what do you have? If you have this kind of land size, population, and Bono East too, if we have it, I don't think there will be any growth. If you don't have, you don't have. If somebody has, then you have to allow the person to move ahead to get his region. So there's nothing wrong with the Bono East getting a region and then the Afo getting a region. The traditional area in the Bono East region is almost, we are 16. We are 16 traditional areas, we are all calling for the creation of the new region.
Well, former Education Minister and spokesperson for the petitioners from the north part of the Brahafo region, Ameya Kumfi, says he's optimistic that their request will be considered as they have a strong case.
You see, this is going to enhance decentralization. And the aim of the government has always been to bring governance to the doorsteps of the people. And to pursue that, I mean, if you have smaller units in the forms of districts, in the forms of regions, that's going to enhance decentralization. And we think that Brahafo region has landmass that can easily accommodate 3 separate regions. And we think we have a case for that. Because it is so big, the central administration in the region finds it difficult in practical terms to cover the entire area. And when you go to the Brahafo region, you see clearly that the eastern corner has virtually been neglected. I think if we have an administration that can pay more attention to this remaining part of the Brahafo region, development will be accelerated.
The Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice SHRAJ says it has completed its investigation into allegations of corruption in the implementation of Zoomlion's contract with metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies. The sanitation improvement package is one of Zoomlion's contracts with all assemblies in Ghana, and payments have been deducted and paid to Zoomlion for more than 10 years. In 2009, a whistleblower from the Tano South District of the Brahafo region petitioned SHRAJ alleging that Zoomlion was colluding with assembly officials to defraud the state. In the following report, Manasseh Azuria Wune reveals why it is taking SHRAJ 8 years to complete the report.
At a communal container site at Aguna in the Hunter West District of the Western Region, the District Environmental Health Officer Owusu Sechra explains why a pile of refuse has developed by the container.
If you look around, you can see that we have 2 containers there. We used to have 1 container. At a point in time, we realized that the contractor doing the work is unable to lift the container at the appropriate time. So that is the reason why those refuse is still lying up there. So at a point, we decided to add another container so that we don't have a situation where refuse will spill over and it will not be collected and to be lying there as we have there now. When we realized that that development was happening, we decided to bring the other container. So now it behoves on the assembly to come in and then find some funds to come and evacuate what is there.
All the 260 metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies pay Zoomlion under the sanitation improvement package contract to lift the containers to the final disposal sites. In almost all the 53 assemblies Joy News visited as part of this investigation, the assemblies say Zoomlion does not lift containers in time, resulting in spillage of refuse. The Hunter West District has acquired more containers and provides fuel for Zoomlion to lift the additional containers, but the problem still persists.
Based on the inability of the contractor to lift it when it is full, because they are supposed to monitor, and anytime it's full, if it's 2 days, 3 days, they lift it. But unfortunately, at times they delay in lifting, and it creates these problems for us.
So whose cost is it to now contract someone to do all of this if you want to evacuate these items we see here?
Yeah, over the years, that's been the cost of the assembly to do that. We always come in to do it, because when the people see it like this, start raining, the complaints begin to come. And the contractor, well, he has nothing to lose. So we have to manage, get some funds to come and evacuate those things from there.
The situation is not different at Duya Nkwanta in the Tano North District of the Bunahaf region. Adoma J is an assembly member here.
At times it can be there for 3 weeks, 1 month. And you know the health implication, most especially when it rains, you know there can be an outbreak of disease. Even with this very season that we are in now, when the wind blows, you see the polythene bag hovering around. And apart from that, the smoke, which also come out with pollution, and those who are residing around, in fact, as a result of the health implication, always do complain about the situation that is happening here. If indeed those who signed the contract with Zoomlion did everything as we expected, then something need to be looked at. Something need to be looked at, or at best, they need to terminate the contract and review it.
The sanitation improvement package is one of the problematic contracts with the Jospon Group. In 2009, a whistleblower from the Tano South District petitioned Shraj to investigate Zoomlion. Joseph Whittle is the commissioner of Shraj.
We got a whistleblower disclosure. I think it was in around 2014, to the effect that Zoomlion, the administrator of the Common Fund, and 138 district assemblies were colluding, conniving to defraud the state. And so we should investigate and make sure that the monies that were wrongfully paid are paid back to the state.
When Shraj started the investigation, Zoomlion went to court to stop the commission.
Their basis for challenging the jurisdiction of Shraj was that they are a private entity, and so the commission can only investigate public officials in regard to corruption.
In November 2013, the court threw out Zoomlion's case and gave Shraj the go-ahead to investigate the company.
Since then, we have proceeded, and we have covered all the 138 at that time, the district assemblies that were then in existence in Ghana were 138. We have concluded. Our report is being compiled, and hopefully we would come out with our decision.
At least 15 other companies of the Jospon Group are currently undergoing investigation by the Police CID and the Economic and Organized Crime Office over allegations of corruption following Joy News investigations.
The Central Region House of Chiefs has been able to resolve more than half of its chieftaincy disputes in just the last 3 months alone. It follows President Akufo-Addo's intervention when he visited the region. President of the Regional House of Chiefs, Obrimpong Nyamfo Krampa XI, had appealed to the President to assist them with a lawyer. He tells Central Region correspondent Richard Kodonyako the region should begin to see a boost in its development now that the numerous disputes are being resolved.
The Central Region, according to surveys and statistics from the Ghana Statistical Service, lags behind in terms of development, even though there are innumerable tourist attractions and other valuable resources that should have placed the region many streets ahead of its peers. Many chieftaincy disputes that have lingered on for a long time have been cited as the chief causes of the challenges regarding development. But it seems the trend is likely to change because the chiefs, according to the president of the Regional House of Chiefs, are ready to soften their stance in many of the cases that are currently pending before the Judicial Committee of the Central Regional House of Chiefs. The president of the Central Regional House of Chiefs, Obrimpon Nyamfo Krampa, the 11th, reports the House has been able to dispose 15 chieftaincy cases out of the 39 cases that had become an albatross on the neck of the House after the visit of President Akufo-Addo.
The president's visit, we as Nananum has taken upon ourselves so many cases which is pending before the Regional House of Chiefs with the help of my registrar and other Nananum. We've been able to trash off most of the cases through ADR method, that is alternative dispute resolution method. And I believe that so far so good. Everything's on course.
The Regional House of Chiefs president believes the region is ready for a takeoff as far as development is concerned because many of the chiefs have vowed and resolved that never again should they allow their differences to affect the development of the region.
We, as the Regional House of Chiefs, will never sit down to allow land disputes or litigations to deprive the progress of the region. We, as Nananum, are here for development. We are trying as much as possible to put all disputes pertaining chieftaincy in the region aside and make sure that all those developmental agendas, programs for the government will at least established. In terms of education, we say that Nananum are also part and parcel to develop education sector in the region. So the assembly or the region should also empower the Nananum, at least on the supervisory level, so that Nananum within the paramountcies, voice can also be heard. Committee can also be set up, at least, to supervise our various schools within our paramountcies. This is advice from the Nananum.
Richard Kwejenyako, Joy News, Cape Coast.
A four-member reconciliation committee set up by the Volta Regional House of Chiefs to mediate long-standing chieftaincy disputes in the Akpini traditional area in the Kpando municipality has identified the Bisiaku and Asianu families as those forming the royal clan. The committee, in a 43-page report on the dispute, subsequently advised that the new paramount chief for the area must be selected from the two families. Joy News' Fred Kwame Asare filed the following report.
The tussle over the rightful heir to the Akpini stool has been raging for over 30 decades, stalling the development of the area. It also brought further disputes between the three subdivisions of the Anyigbe division and prevented kingmakers from installing a successor for the late paramount chief, Togbega Dagadu the 7th. The Member of Parliament for Kpando, Delasowa, who was unhappy about the protracted chieftaincy dispute, petitioned the Volta Regional House of Chiefs to endeavor to intervene. The committee in the last 8 months met the 18 different groups, asserted that the Asianu and Bisiaku families of the Gbodeme division make up the royal family and must come to a consensus to select a suitor for the Akpini stool. The chairman of the Reconciliation Committee, Paramount Chief of the Ziafi traditional area, Togbe Ayim Kweku IV, urged the entire traditional area to support the Asianu Bisiaku families to agree on the new paramount chief.
The committee recommends that the three divisions exhilarate the Bisiaku royal family to nominate and install a fresh paramount chief of the Akpini state before the end of April 2018. Akpini State cannot and must not continue singing the choruses of bad blood in 2018. Akpini State must and should turn a new leaf by the end of April 2018. Akpini State must and should rise now.
The divisional chief of the Anyigbe, Togbe Afeja, commended the committee on its findings and appealed to his compatriots to act on the recommendations to forestall lasting peace.
Actually,
I am very happy about the work done by the committee. The entire Kpando community needs to unite and make peace. Whoever might be offended by the outcome of the committee's work should consider the interests of Kpando first and accept the report.
Representatives of the various divisions, subdivisions and stakeholders in the area picked copies of the report for further scrutiny. Pacification and reconciliation rites were earlier performed to bring peace between the three feuding subdivisions of the Anyigbe division. Fred Kwame Asari's report, Joy News.